Cameron Crazy.
Brett Hundley. David Baker. John Chancellor.
Tom Brokaw.
Home stretch, the growing pressure to turn out the vote on this final weekend of campaigning. Forced to resign, church leaders find Pastor Ted Haggard guilty of sexually immoral conduct. The verdict, bracing for the worst in Baghdad as an Iraqi court decides Saddam's fate. And first look, exclusive video of the only person ever charged in connection with 9/11.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with John Siegenthaler.
Good evening, everyone. It is now just 2 days away, the midterm elections that will determine which party controls Congress. This weekend, Republicans and Democrats are engaged in a last-minute effort to get out the vote. And today, President Bush continued his campaign through battleground states. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell joins us tonight from the President's Ranch near Crawford, Texas. Kelly, good evening.
Good evening, John. The president is spending a night off the campaign trail at his ranch after trying to boost the chances of House, Senate, and gubernatorial candidates. And right now, he's about halfway through his 10-state tour.
The President of the United States.
This close to the vote, the campaign stagecraft goes big, really big. A rock star entrance for the president in rural Colorado.
This election is just 3 days away.
His battered approval rating less evident here in rally mode, where he tried to rev up the GOP base.
We're going to win this election because our values and priorities don't change because of the latest poll or the latest focus group.
Using every tactic to motivate voters now. Not just fired up crowds. The president also made a pin drop quiet pitch.
And however you decide, I urge you to get out and vote on Tuesday.
Extremely rare, he delivered his weekly radio address on camera.
I appreciate you listening.
Democrats called on presidential power too. In Michigan today, Bill Clinton helping candidates there and beyond.
I have now been to 29 states campaigning.
Also deployed, the Democrats' emerging star, Illinois Senator Barack Obama, in Pennsylvania today.
The only thing we need now is you.
Candidates everywhere feeling the deadline pressure.
In turnout, the answer is the last 72 hours are crucial.
Experts say grassroots efforts work best.
Some kind of personal contact, as opposed to advertising or direct mail or other ways, is much more highly effective in getting people to vote.
From a knock at the door in Virginia today,
we're encouraging everybody to get out and vote on Tuesday,
to phone banks that have got your number.
We're calling other union members this afternoon. We're asking them to please go out and vote this coming Tuesday.
Analysts say the final push is less about changing minds and more about moving feet on Tuesday, especially independents.
They usually don't vote much in midterm election years. It looks like they will break 2-1 for Democrats if they show up, but the question is, do they show up?
And the president's been telling those rally crowds why he wanted to come back to Crawford, Texas, because tonight they're celebrating the First Lady's 60th birthday, and her approval rating is much higher than his. Tomorrow, it's back on the campaign trail with stops in Nebraska and Kansas. John?
NBC's Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, thanks. Now, as the election nears, there's a new Newsweek poll out tonight, and it shows an overwhelming majority of Americans, 64%, are dissatisfied with the direction of the country. It also shows that 53% of those surveyed would like to see the Democrats control Congress, while only 32% say they want Republicans in control. And there's an even wider split among independents. By a margin of more than 2-1, 55% of independents say they would rather have Democrats in charge. MSNBC's election anchor and the host of Hardball, Chris Matthews, joins us tonight to talk about congressional politics. Chris, those polls show the Democrats with an edge this year. Do you get any sense the polls are off base or that the pollsters could be wrong this time?
Well, the pollsters are great about the overall national trend, and it looks like among independents, especially as you just said, and it's not just in the Newsweek poll, also in the NBC poll, independents breaking heavily for the Democrats. So that you can predict. But when it comes down to particular Senate races, it's 50-50 in a number of these races, like in Missouri and Montana. It doesn't change. It's within the margin of error, and pollsters can't help you there.
Chris, we saw the president out again on the campaign trail today. What's at stake for the president in this election?
Control of his own government. If you look at the world press in the hours after this election is counted on Wednesday morning, from Rangoon to Reykjavik, the headline's going to read, potentially, if it breaks bad for the president, Bush loses control of government over Iraq issue. The world press, which is anti-American already, will jump on this and say Bush has lost his control over his own government. It'll look bad for the president in world diplomacy.
MSNBC's Chris Matthews. As always, Chris, thanks very much.
Thank you, John.
And a program note, tomorrow on Meet the Press, Tim Russert is joined by all 4 campaign committee chairs for an exclusive debate on the upcoming vote. And you can stay with NBC News for comprehensive coverage of Election Night 2006. Brian Williams will be joined by Tim Russert and Tom Brokaw for all the results Tuesday night at 10, 9 Central Time, along with hourly updates here on this NBC station. Now to a story that is still developing tonight. Evangelical pastor Ted Haggard was forced to resign today as the head of the New Life Church in Colorado Springs after the church board of overseers found him guilty of sexually immoral conduct. NBC's George Lewis has the latest.
At the 14,000-member New Life Church in Colorado Springs, that Haggard's resignation as head of the organization, as he also stepped aside as pastor of his church.
Both of those roles are based on trust, and right now my trust is questionable.
As a leading evangelical, Haggard has been a frequent guest at the White House. He has spoken out in favor of a gay marriage ban on the Colorado ballot. Colorado Republicans, pumped up by the president's visit today, hope this scandal won't turn off the party's base here.
We're going to win this election because our values and priorities don't change because of the latest poll.
But the gay prostitute who said Haggard paid him for drugs and sex questions those values. He appeared on Today this morning.
When I hear someone preaching against 2 people that love each other that cannot get married because of the same sex, and he's up there saying he believes in the sanctity of marriage but is cheating on his wife, that's not right.
One church official says tomorrow's services are pivotal in helping church members deal with this scandal and move on from here. George Lewis, NBC News, Colorado Springs.
We turn to Iraq now on the eve of a major court decision. Tomorrow, an Iraqi judge will decide the fate of Saddam Hussein. U.S. and Iraqi forces are bracing for the reaction. NBC's Jane Araf has that story.
Some of the tightest security in Baghdad in months today. Iraqi officials awaiting a verdict have increased checkpoints in charge. It was a much different man who was captured in a hole in the ground almost 3 years ago. For the past year, Saddam and some of his closest aides have stood trial. Hussein will likely appeal a guilty verdict that could take up to a year. In the meantime, he's standing trial on charges of ordering the killing of Iraqi Kurds, like the Shias, a community that wants its day in court. Jane Araf, NBC News, Baghdad.
A surprising editorial decision was revealed today by a group of newspapers read primarily by members of the military and their families. The papers called for the firing of Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. Here's NBC's Rosalind Jordan.
With the war in Iraq as violent as ever for U.S. forces, new calls for Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld to step down. In an editorial to be published Monday, a group of military publications, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times, say Rumsfeld should resign. The editors wrote, his strategy has failed and his ability to lead is compromised. This is not about the midterm elections. The time has come, Mr. President, to face the hard, bruising truth. Donald Rumsfeld must go. The newspapers are owned by Gannett and are marketed to the armed forces and their families. In Colorado today, President Bush wasn't taking questions. Earlier this week, he strongly backed his defense secretary, saying he wants Rumsfeld to stay on through the end of his presidency. A Pentagon spokesman dismissed the editorials as old news and defended Rumsfeld's handling of the war.
I'm astounded. In 40 years, more than 40 years, I have never seen an article, let alone an editorial, on a subject like this written as forthrightly as this one was.
Jacobs says the papers are known for supporting the military through good times and bad. But could this affect forces now deployed in Iraq?
I'm sure that the editors of the newspaper took into account the fact that castigating the Secretary of Defense, a sitting Secretary of Defense, would have a deleterious effect on morale before they went ahead and published it.
Rumsfeld offered to resign twice after the Abu Ghraib scandal broke, but both times President Bush turned him down. Rosalind Jordan, NBC News, the White House.
When NBC Nightly News continues this Saturday, an NBC News exclusive. The only person ever charged in connection with 9/11 as never seen before. An exclusive look tonight at the face of the man who has been a major figure in the news for nearly 5 years, but is only seen a few times in old photographs. Zacarias Moussaoui was sentenced to life in prison in May for his role in Al-Qaeda. Tonight, NBC Justice correspondent Pete Williams with a new look at the prisoner.
Just before midnight on May 12th, U.S. Marshals whisked Zacarias Moussaoui out of jail by helicopter and escorted him to a small government jet just outside Washington for a direct flight to a life in federal prison. This government video and these still pictures obtained exclusively by NBC News offer the first public glimpse of the only person ever charged by the U.S. in connection with the 9/11 attacks. Allah Akbar, he says. God is great.
The security arrangements which were in place for Mr. Moussaoui were unprecedented for the Marshals Service.
Deputy Marshal Andrew Smith says Moussaoui didn't realize the gravity of what was coming until they approached the maximum security prison in Colorado, where he'll serve his life sentence.
At that point, he began to soak in the fact that, this was where he was going to spend the rest of his life.
U.S. Marshals move nearly 300,000 prisoners a year, including such notorious criminals as Olympic bomber Eric Rudolph, Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, and would-be shoe bomber Richard Reed.
The more high-profile a prisoner is, the more attention they have on the worldwide news, the more we tend to treat them as a security risk.
Moussaoui was found guilty of lying to federal investigators when he was arrested a month before the 9/11 attacks, buying time for the suicide hijackers. He's serving his life sentence in a concrete cell like this one, 7 by 12 feet. When permitted, he gets 1 hour of exercise in a metal pen, but is never allowed contact with any other prisoners. Lawyers are working on Moussaoui's appeal, but it won't come up for another year, and legal experts give it little chance of success. Pete Williams, NBC News, Washington.
And we'll be right back. Finally tonight, a first for the American Episcopal Church. Catherine Jeffords Schori took over the leadership of the denomination, receiving the symbol of her new position at a ceremony in Washington's National Cathedral. She's the first woman in the worldwide Anglican community to become presiding bishop. That's our abbreviated edition of NBC Nightly News for this Saturday. Thanks for watching. I'm John Siegenthaler in New York, and for all of us at NBC News, good night.
NBC News, America's news leader.
Dateline said my accountant called me up this morning, says I don't know what to do, no matter how I run the number.
Now here's Stone Phillips with a look at what's coming up on Dateline Saturday night. Stone? That's NBC Nightly News for this Saturday. Thanks for watching. I'm John Siegenthaler reporting from New York, and I'll see you back here tomorrow night. Just opened a major retrospective of the work of Andrew Wyeth. Now in his 9th decade, the painter sat down with NBC's Jamie Gangel for his first ever network TV. Reporting from New York. I'll see you back here again tomorrow night.
NBC News, America's news leader. NBC News, America's news leader.
30 weather.